Well, welcome back to a special edition of the New Adam podcast with Man in the Mirror. We are here not discussing one of our normal themes, which is challenges facing men today, but we're actually here to give more of a report and to tell stories. Brett has just come back from a long whirlwind trip through Asia. And one of the things that's interesting about Man in the Mirror is that we are global. There is Man in the Mirror Asia. And, Westerners tend to only think about their needs in their countries. But there is this thriving, growing Man in the Mirror Asia presence. And we want to celebrate that and tell those stories because you just went on this long trip. So welcome back. How's the jet lag?
It's been a week, and it was a 12-hour switch from where we were, literally on the other side of the world, 5 countries in 15 days. And so I'm a week in. They tell me it's a day per hour, so I've still got. I'm glad to hear that because it's like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. My brain just starts turning into jelly. So.
Oh yeah. I went to China twice to teach with Campus Crusade. Yeah, famously one time I missed the flight there because it takes. I mean, I show up. I'm supposed to arrive on a Sunday. I arrive, I think, on Saturday morning, but I was supposed to leave Friday morning. Because in my head, I'm like it's like you said, it's 12 hours difference, and then it's a 24-hour flight, so it's a 36-hour difference of delay. It's just really mind trippy. And the guy goes, "You're a day late, $1 short. Sorry." And so that was one. I did end up going. I was just a day late. And then another time I came back, and I just remember going to McDonald's at like 3:30 a.m. because it was like 3 afternoon, and I wanted lunch because it was lunchtime in my body, but they only had was breakfast, and yeah. It's a wild experience.
Yeah, 12 hours is really crazy. And then trying to remember if you're ahead or behind and
ahead or behind, and we're really the only. It's only been about a century since we've been doing this. Most humans, you'd have to take a boat and slowly acclimate both ways and all that. So
yeah, that's true.
But we're also able to capture these stories, and so what we want to do is just kind of go step by step and really highlight each of the 5 countries and places you were. Tell their stories, talk about those ministries, those leaders that are on the ground for Man in the Mirror. So let's start off. You took off, and what was your first destination?
Yeah, so Peter's our director of development and national director of development. Peter and I left from Orlando on a Saturday night and got in on a Monday morning. So there's your 36 hours of time, even though it's 24 hours of traveling. And we landed in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, late morning. And we have a MIM Asia director named Robert Lim, who's really built a beautiful ministry all across Asia, based out of Kuala Lumpur. And so we landed, and Robert picked us up, and we went right to the MIM Asia office and met with their board of directors. And they treated us to some greetings, but then they actually pulled instruments out. And they said, "Hey, we do worship every Monday morning, and so we waited for you guys to do our worship time." And so it was like 4 or 5 board members and 3 or 4 other guys that are involved with MIM Asia in KL. And
so how did these guys get going?
I'm sorry.
How did these guys get going? Like, what's their initial launch? Like, how long have they been doing it?
It's really crazy. So I went to Asia in 2002 and 2004, and I went to work with a guy that was based in Singapore, and he was an American expat and just really had a heart for Man in the Mirror. After his story is he got in a bike accident and he was in the hospital, and a friend of his who had been trying to talk to him about the gospel, and he would just sort of put him off. He's Catholic and sort of a nominal Catholic. So his friend walked in and threw a book down on his bed and said, "Now that God's got your attention, read this book." And that book was The Man in the Mirror.
Oh, wow.
And so he read this book. It was like 2000, 2001, and ended up coming back to America as part of his business, and came into our offices and said, "Hey, I want somebody to come to Singapore. And also I'll take them to Kuala Lumpur, and I'll take them to Jakarta. And because I have businesses there, and I really want to bring the Man in the Mirror material to Asia." So that was sort of the birth of it. And in 02, 04. And then in 2016, Pat Morley went and did a little China and Asia tour. He went to Beijing and Shanghai and Kuala Lumpur and met a guy named Robert Lim. And Robert, a couple years before, had found the book, The Man in the Mirror, and had started just taking guys through the book. It really was impactful for him. He was an ad exec, had his own ad agency, but was a believer, and the book really helped him get serious about his faith. And so he started taking guys through the Man in the Mirror book, and met Pat in 2016. And then for the last whatever that is now, 9 years, he's been slowly building his ministry or our ministry in and throughout Asia, based in Kuala Lumpur. So here we are 9 years later, and he's gone from getting guys going, reading the Man in the Mirror book, to now working with us and with Pat to create a curriculum called My Journey, which is based on selected chapters from about a dozen of Pat's books. And they've done all 3 years of My Journey in English, and now they're slowly translating it into other languages. And just in Kuala Lumpur, Robert has like over 50 groups going all across the city of 5 to 8 men who are using this curriculum. Some of them are still using the book, and just engaging in meaningful conversations that develop meaningful relationships that change lives and build a kingdom, like our mission statement says.
Well, my question that always pops in my head is just my I have a curiosity, I should say, but I'm always, I lived in Europe. I was always surprised at how people speak different languages.
Yeah.
Like the waitress in a shop spoke French to one table, English to us, and she was Dutch herself. And I was like,
Yeah.
you should be like an executive somewhere with being trilingual, but she's a waitress, but this is normal. And so, but that's the question I have. First thought was like, was it largely English based? Because you've been expat, and you're talking about China and other places with multiple languages. How does that all integrate and work?
Yes. Singapore and Malaysia are both very English speaking places. Most people know Chinese and English. And in Malaysia, you've got people also, the natives that speak Malay, like ethnic natives, but a lot of people in Malaysia are Chinese, a lot of people.
Okay.
And so you've got Malay, you've got Chinese, you got people that come up from Indonesia, which is about, the way Robert explained to me, like about Indonesian and Malaysian have sort of a 50% crossover,
Okay.
enough that they can understand each other, even if they don't technically speak the other language.
Sure.
So English is the default. It's sort of the business default. It's what all the, a lot of TV and entertainment stuff's in English. And so a lot of people, that's just what they learn. They learn English in school from a young age.
That sounds like the ancient church, man. Paul, everybody just gets Greek because there's so many mixing of languages and cultures, and there's a mono language that everyone can speak. And yeah,
exactly. Honestly, exactly like that.
Yeah. And in similar sense, man, up to 50 groups. And so, okay, so you land and you guys got to singing right off the plane.
Yeah. We walk into the office, take some pictures at the door, walk in, meet everybody. And the next thing I know, there's a guitar in a guy's hand. Robert's got a tambourine for real. And they're just, this is something that I think there's some Americans that are comfortable with this, but like, I don't know about you, but like a small group of people singing is a little bit vulnerable or something.
Well, I was going to make a joke. Could Peter hold a tune or not?
Yeah. Like a large group is one thing, but a small group is, it's a little. You feel a little naked.
You're reformed. You're reformed enough to know how to mumble to stay under the crowd's volume so they don't hear you.
Well, here's the thing. They were so excited that we were there, and they were so excited to worship with us that it was contagious. We were quickly just as excited as they were. And so it's just so encouraging to start that way. Like God, it's, in his sovereignty, he knew that 2 exhausted guys getting off of a 12-hour airplane flight needed to needed to not jump into serious conversation. We needed to jump into worship and praise and being with our brothers. And so then the last song, they said we have one more song, but we have to go get a prop for the song. And I'm like, what in the world? And so they leave, and then they come back with a cheesecake that says, have a blessed birthday, Brett, because that was my birthday. September 29th, that Monday was my birthday. And I didn't know that they knew, but they did. And so I had a biscotti cheesecake, birthday cake. And,
there you go. That's how you get over jet lag. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, exactly.
So you turned 50
So then we
again.
sat down with their board, and we just talked about what's going on, a typical board meeting, right? We talked through finances a little bit. We talked through numbers of groups in all throughout Asia, because MIM Asia is based in Kuala Lumpur. So they've got the KL ministry, but then they're responsible for all of the ministries across the continent. So it was really encouraging to hear all the different things that are going on, and it was it was a nice precursor for the trip, because we talked about what was going on in the different countries that we were about to go to. So we had some nice foundation going into it.
Okay. And how long were you there at this leg of the journey?
So we spent 2 nights in Malaysia. Every other country we were in for 3 nights, but we spent 2 nights in Malaysia. So we met with the board, and then we left from there, went back to the hotel and got a quick rest and unpacked and everything. And then we headed back out, and Peter and I each got to go to an MIM, they call them MIM groups. So I got to sit in on a Man in the Mirror group with about 7 or 8 young men. They spoke Chinese they normally speak Chinese, but they spoke English so that I could understand what's going on. It was interesting, because every once in a while somebody would look at one of the other guys and say, I'm sure in Chinese, like, how do you say this word in English? And then they, just for my benefit.
Right.
And, for an hour and a half, these guys, I would say probably there was one new guy jumped in, like he'd been there for a lifetime. And then most of the other guys had been together for over a year at that point. And they were talking about their families. They were talking about their marriages. They were talking about their careers. They were doing a chapter out of the My Journey book that, was getting them to have serious conversations about real things. And the fact that they had been together for a while, you could kind of tell they were comfortable with each other. And so here's an interesting thing. So the group leader, they're going around doing updates. They do a memory. I'm sorry, let me start from the beginning. So they get together and they go, all right, we're going to do the memory verse for the week. Who's ready to do the memory verse? And like any group of men anywhere in the world, nobody wanted to raise their hand. Nobody wanted to go first. And then finally one of the guys said, all right, I'll go first. And he didn't have it half memorized. I mean, and so
typical. That's a man.
So the other guys are like sitting there with their books, and they're like, giving them a little prompt here and a little prompt there. And he got through it. And then the next guy, same thing. Guys had to give him prompts, but they went all the way around, which was pretty cool. And then they were doing updates, and the leader of the group, the facilitator of the group, says, I put in 2 job applications last week. And the other guys were like, hey, that's fantastic. I'm really glad to hear that, because the 2 weeks before that, when they had met, they meet every other week. 2 weeks before that, when they had met, and it was talking about understanding your calling in your career. And this guy had shared in the meeting that he really felt like he was just doing his job because it paid, because he was getting a paycheck, but not really what the Lord wanted him to do. And he was really becoming convicted of that. And so the guys 2 weeks ago had asked him, what's your plan? And he's like, I really don't know. I'm just coming to this realization now. So when he said, I put in 2 job applications, like the guys were like, oh, that's really good, because we were going to ask you about that. And so you can see like these guys are holding each other accountable.
Holding it, yeah.
You know, not in like a
Judgy,
legalistic way, but like,
legal,
hey,
yeah.
you said that you're not where you're supposed to be. What are you doing about it? You know?
Yeah,
And he had already put in 2 job out. He had already heard back from one that he wasn't accepted, but the other one wanted to interview him. And so the guys were like, "Oh, tell us about the job and why do you think this is something that's in your calling?" And like, it was really cool to see these guys leaning into each other's lives.
I mean, that sounds like a men's group you could hear anywhere.
Anywhere.
And it's always amazing to hear that men are just men.
I was going to say, one of the things I learned, and this happened in country after country, the issues are the issues. The men's issues are men's issues. Men's struggles are men's struggles. You know, there's cultural and sort of political challenges
sure.
in some places that everybody doesn't have. There's socioeconomic differences, but the issues of men trying to be the husbands and fathers and you know, live into their calling and you know, build the kingdom. Like they're all the same no matter where you are.
The stagnation that we sometimes get, even in small things, you know, or wanting to get like our faith gets, it's not that we get lukewarm always, but this, we get complacent, you know, we like the guy saying, I'm just doing it for the money, you know. It's just like life just kind of gets, well, this is what I'm supposed to do, you know, going through the motions.
Yeah, and I honestly, I think the word that comes into my mind is petty. Like I feel like sometimes we sort of, our faith is petty when it comes to like the real issues that we're facing. And
we're flimsy.
You know, these guys weren't willing to let their faith be petty. They're like, no, this is real stuff. This is important. This is supposed to guide our lives. So let's do that together.
That's good. Yeah. And so, well, if you were to encapsulate the first of 5 legs of the journey, how would you summarize that experience in a phrase or a nutshell?
Yeah, you know what really struck me is that Robert had been there for several years and working very hard, and so I think sort of like recognizing that the consistent efforts of a faithful man will bear fruit. And I know in those early days, he probably was like, he had 3 groups going and then he probably got a 4th and then 2 of them stopped meeting. And I'm sure the early days were like that. But to like sit in this board meeting and now see, oh, here's 50 groups. And it's not just like tick marks on a paper. It's like, this group meets at this time. This is the leader. This is how many guys are in the group. This group meets at, I mean,
it's
integrated. It was real, you know,
real.
And just to see the efforts of a faithful man over time, you know,
that's awesome. And from there on to what was phase 2?
Yeah, we flew from Kuala Lumpur south to Surabaya, Indonesia, which was I think the 2nd largest city in Indonesia, or at least in East Java.
All right, what was that like? Give me the experience. I've never been to Indonesia. What was that like?
Yeah, so Indonesia, most people don't realize this. Indonesia is the largest Muslim country in the world. They have more Muslims in Indonesia than any other country, and yet it's technically illegal to convert in Malaysia. Like you can be what you are, but you're not supposed to change religions, and they really want you to be Muslim.
Yeah.
And then Indonesia, it's pretty open. Like they don't persecute anyone for what they believe, but the Muslims themselves obviously are. Well, you can't, like, if you leave the faith, your family's not going to have anything to do with you.
We have high pressure, not high persecution.
Yeah, that's a good, and a high social pressure.
You
know, high social pressure. So in Indonesia, you know, we get there the first night. This young, you know, guy in his, I think late 30s picks us up. He looked like he was in his late 20s. That's why I called him young. But it turns out he's in his late 30s.
To us, that is.
Yeah. And he takes us out to eat first thing. And like I sent my kids, my wife and kids, a picture of the fish head that was left after we ate the fish, like this.
Just the head.
Yeah, because they bring the whole fish
Yeah.
out like on a plate. They scale it and then cook it and bring it out. And that that was a consistent theme throughout the 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks. Was the food was amazing.
Yeah, yeah. That was my experience in China. I know it's a different culture, but I was just like, "Are you kidding me?" Like every time.
Every meal, and I know they were
Yeah,
pulling out the stops because it was
sure,
because
sure.
we were there, but it was unbelievable. So we had this great meal, and a big difference from Malaysia to Indonesia is in Indonesia, almost nobody spoke English. So
Okay,
we were really relying on people to translate for us. And even the guy that picked us up, his English wasn't great.
okay.
He could understand
What language would be their
It's called Bahasa Indonesian.
Bahasa? Okay, Indonesia. Okay.
Bahasa, yeah. So they, everybody's super friendly, and that everybody was friendly pretty much everywhere we went. People were pretty friendly, uh, and then but no, almost no English in Indonesia, except like in the hotel we had. We were sort of a Western hotel, so we were okay there. The other thing that happened in Indonesia was uh, they did a dinner the second night, and um, we're laughing like there was a red carpet down the middle of the room, so it looks like they rolled out the red carpet for us. It was just a rough room, but my staff was enjoying the idea that they rolled out the red carpet for us.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
again, we met a bunch of guys in a bunch of different already meeting in a bunch of different groups,
Mhm.
and all guys of all ages. Guys, I met a 19-year-old, and I met an 82-year-old, and
Wow.
they're just really excited about being in a Man in the Mirror group. And again, authentic conversations, authentic relationships, and really just engaged with each other. And the
Would
interesting
these
thing,
have been sorry, real quick. Would these have been converts, or would they have been like raised Christian and taking their faith seriously more? How would you have characterized them?
probably mostly raised Christian, maybe a few converts, but
Okay.
mostly raised Christian.
Okay.
Um, yeah, and I think part of that is a little bit of the nature of the ministry. There is they are really trying to strengthen the brothers,
Yeah.
and there is like we got into when we I'll skip ahead real quick. We got into Nepal. There was a lot of an evangelistic bent there for more than any place else. And
Mm.
in fact, the Nepali director that we have is also the Evangelism Explosion national
Okay.
director. He's married those
Yeah.
two roles together, and
Wow.
he's like, yeah, EE brings people to the faith. Man in the Mirror disciples them in the faith.
Hey,
That's how we looked at it.
that's
So that's
great.
pretty cool. But in Indonesia, the thing that was interesting there was there's these three men that we dealt with primarily. So one was this young guy that I told you about at the beginning. His name was Tim, and Tim has raised his hand and said, I'll be the MIM director for Surabaya. And then we found him because there's this guy named his name is Peter, and Peter's a very, very successful businessman. And so like he used to he export from Indonesia, like jackets to for manufacturers that you've heard of.
Vandalay Industries, yeah, importer exporter.
Yeah, that kind of thing. And
So,
so he had made a fair amount of money. And his passion.
yeah.
This is a total side note, but his passion was interior design, which was really funny. He kept
Really?
showing us like, oh, I designed the interior of my new house, and he showed it to us. And he's got a gift. He's got a flair for it.
Hey, there you go.
He's a strong believer. He loves Christian education, and he loves men's discipleship. So he's
That's
funded
awesome.
seminaries and Christian
Wow.
schools, and he's helping to fund Man in the Mirror Indonesia. And so so he actually though lives a couple hundred miles away, and flew in to meet us. And then there was a gentleman in Surabaya named Sindhu, and Sindhu is an older guy, very distinguished, and he's been working with another ministry called International Disciple Making Churches, and IDCM, is that right? Disciple
Mm,
IDMC, with a guy named Edmund Chan, who's pretty well known over in that part of the world for helping churches really focus on discipleship. And so Sindhu said, IDC, IDMC is great for raising up leaders, but there's like no material for those guys to actually use to disciple anyone. So now Man in the Mirror comes
mm,
in with the My Journey curriculum that we've developed that's been translated into Bahasa.
okay.
And so I've got these leaders that are ready now, and then I give them My Journey and they go start men's groups. And Tim is a guy that Sindhu and Peter knew. And so they're like, all right, Tim, you're going to be our guy. So they drafted Tim to be the director. So just this multi-generational thing, Sindhu's a respected older man in the
Yeah.
faith. Peter's a very well-respected, successful businessman. And then you've got Tim, who's like the frontline guy. So just seeing the power of partnership between the generations, I think was
Wow.
probably
Yeah.
what I walked away from Indonesia with.
Power of partnerships. Yeah. And that's not to make everything go. You're being interviewed by a church historian. I do this, but it sounds like so many of the stories. I mean, going back to Acts, and you get Lydia the purple cloth. You get business folks who just say, "I have a passion for this, and we're going to grow this."
Yeah.
And it's always some passionate person that says, "Yeah, I could keep buying more stuff, or I could keep funding, or I could start getting involved with the kingdom." And that passion, is contagious.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and then you look at a guy like Paul, and like when he had to, he made tents,
Right. Right. Exactly.
but only when he had to.
Yeah.
When the
Yeah. Yeah.
Macedonians sent the offering, then that freed him up from having to make tents, and then he could really focus on all of his time on ministry. And so,
Exactly.
a lot of these guys, they start with a job and a ministry, and they, as soon as the brothers come around him, and honestly, that's the pattern here in the US as well. We've got area directors that have to start somewhere, and so a lot of times
Mm,
they do area director work, ministry work, and a career. And then as people come in around them and fund their ministry, they can put all of their time and energy in the
that's right.
ministry. And so for Tim, he's a dad, he's a husband and a dad, and got a few kids at home. And
Mm,
because of Sindhu and Peter, he's able to do this full time. And then part of his job will actually be to raise some more supporters around him to underwrite the ministry that's going on there.
that's great. So you were there 3 days.
There 3 days, and met all those guys. Met a bunch of pastors, and ate a lot more food.
Were any of the countries? I just got a Blackstone grill out back, so I'm suddenly a chef. My kids keep making fun of me. Was any of the? I don't do spice very well. I can go like medium,
Yeah.
a little bit over medium. Was there anything that you were just like, I am too white for this food? During the trip?
I ate everything that they put in front of me. I'm trying to think. There was one thing that I
No
wasn't.
heat, no like spice that like took you down.
No, I was fine.
They might have had, yeah.
There was a couple times where they would put out this little thing of peppers, like chili pepper paste or something.
And you knew not to go
And there
there.
were a couple. This happened in Indonesia and in China, and they were like, you don't want that."
Yeah.
And
Yeah. They're very courteous. Yeah.
so Peter loves really spicy stuff.
Okay.
So Peter like got something and dipped it in it. This was in Indonesia, and he put it in his mouth, and he's like, "Oh, this is really good." And about 45 seconds later, his eyes started wandering. He's like, "Oh, that's really got a kick on the back end." So I was happy that I didn't try it. But I mean, I tried everything they put in front of me, and
That's
I
great.
love the food over there. Lots of different kinds of vegetables and fruits, and I had a soup one day in I think it was in China actually. I had a bowl of soup, and there was a chicken in it, like a whole. I mean, the head and
Just
feet were cut off, but everything else I think was
the
there
whole
pretty
chicken.
much. I mean, it was gutted, and just like I'm like, and sort of chopped, semi chopped in the bowl, and there was a
Huh?
lot of like spooning chunks of things out and sort of chewing on
Yeah,
it a little bit. And yeah, it
rustic
was
and primal,
very different.
very different. All right, so phase 3, where was that off to?
Yeah. So then we fly from Indonesia up to China, and that's when things were, that's probably the first time that we were like, oh, this is a different situation. So
More
we
cautious.
were briefed before we went. The guy that works in China mostly actually lives in Kuala Lumpur. And there's they call it the house church movement there. It's not
Mm-hmm.
legal. The government
Nope.
is not happy about it. And
There is
uh
a legal church, but it's in China, but it's government
right,
controlled.
it's run
Yeah,
by the
yeah,
government. It's not really it's not really a gospel preaching church. It's more
yeah,
a morality,
yeah. They're not
morality
allowed to.
based.
Yeah, that's right.
And so I don't want to say too much, but we worked hard not to draw attention to ourselves and to be respectful. A lot of it's interesting. Even most of the Christians that we met, well, really everybody that we met, if anybody did talk about the government, they actually talked about it pretty favorably, which kind of
Yeah.
surprised me. I
No,
live in
yeah,
America where I'm happy with the government, and we still talk bad about the government
yeah.
all the
We're still
time.
made. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's the
So
American
they're
way.
like, no, it's great. It's things are orderly, and we never go without, and things are
Mm-hmm.
organized, and there's no smog in Guangzhou. We were in a city called Guangzhou, and with 18 million people, Ryan, in this
Oh
city,
yeah,
and
I
just
was
mile
shocked.
after
Yeah,
mile after mile of like 25, 30-story apartment buildings,
isn't it crazy? Yeah,
and
and they're
it's
all
just
just so
and
dense.
and everything looks new. Everything's until we got into like the old market, like
Mm-hmm.
everything looked new. Um, all the cars, like 80% of the cars are electric, and there's a probably 2 scooters for every car on the road, and all the
Scooters are big.
scooters were
Yeah,
electric. And so they showed
yeah,
pictures
yeah,
of like 20 years ago and today, and you can see how much smog and haze there was 20 years ago.
yeah. I was there
And now
14
there's
years
none.
ago. 14 years ago, they were still. It was right before the Olympics.
Yeah.
And the government would just seed the clouds to get rid of smog. They would terraform. They'd just be
Yeah.
like, we're just going to get rid of it,
Yeah.
And
Oh
so
yeah.
the Olympics looked like it was smog free, but I had to wear a mask a few days back then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were fine. Like the air was clear, and we were there during Mid Autumn Festival, which was pretty cool. We went to the old market one night, and they had lots of paper lanterns up, and
Mm,
there's a little river that goes through there, and so you could see the boats coming by with all the lights on the boats, and
yeah.
it was a lot of fun. And we visited a few groups that were meeting, and we're like I said, we're just sort of very low key about that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
but but the interesting thing was just how like Christianity costs those people something that
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't cost us, because like you like the pastors that they have, they can't, that's not it's not like a
Mm-mm.
state recognized vocation. So you've got that issue. They're not supposed to they're not supposed to be meeting the way that they meet. The government knows that they do, but they basically are like, don't make any trouble and it'll be okay. But if you make trouble, then we're going to start arresting people.
Yeah. So 14 years ago, that's kind of how it was described. It was like we literally got into a taxi, and the guy's entire inside of his taxi was covered in crosses.
Yeah.
And he was just like, "I love Jesus, man," and he
Yeah.
was a Chinese guy, and we asked him, we're like, "Aren't you worried?" He goes, "No, I don't make anybody mad," and
Yeah.
he just didn't care. That there was still some bull. He kind of knew he could, and I kept probing that. I was like, I thought this was sort of Maoist China. It was just how dumb I was,
Yeah.
and they said no, and I was shocked that I was teaching church history in a hotel. And they said, no, you're a Westerner here to teach Western missionaries. They don't care.
Yeah.
If you came and taught Chinese people or natives or try to proselytize
Right.
and started to seem, a local governor could get frustrated.
Yeah.
So that's how it was described to me. And so I was very surprised how I didn't feel that worried, but I wasn't meeting with pastors or groups like you
Yeah.
did, where
Yeah.
people
We
were
talked to
cautious.
I talked to one guy, and I said, have you been detained before? And he said, yeah, I've been detained. And I said, well, what do you do? And he basically said, they speak very strongly for themselves and for Christianity. He said, what we've learned is that they want you to stand up to them. If you don't stand up to them, then they'll just keep coming back at you because you're easy.
Mm.
But if you stand up for yourself, they'll sort of yell at you and probably give you a fine. And they can do stuff like limit your ability to travel and that kind of thing.
That happened to one person when I was there. Yeah, he was standing up for himself, and I was just like leaning back, like he was like, "No, give me my passport back!" Like yelling at them.
Yeah.
It's just like,
oh yeah.
this is different. The negotiation of the stress for Chinese people after just a brief experience, I could tell was different than what my Western mind thought it was. I thought, again, it was more like Soviet Russia or something, and it's just it's far more complex of how they interact with it. Yeah.
That's a great word. It's very complex, but I mean, it's humbling to see what it costs them to be a Christian, and that they like literally joyfully engage in that. It's just because they believe in the New Testament, right? It's just because they believe that suffering produces character and perseverance and hope.
Who would have thought that'd be a reality?
Yeah, they're like living it out in a way that we just don't have to here. So that was like super encouraging, and also like I left there like sad, like just really hurting for these people that like it's a struggle, and recognizing that it's so easy for me and for us here in a Western country, but for them it's a real struggle, and they accept that, like that's the deal.
That's the deal.
And so they accept it. So it was a beautiful country, like I said, very modern. We met a ton of different people. And the night that we went out on the market, I went out on the market with 4 or 5 other guys, and Peter, and it was just like a bunch of dudes hanging around, walking through the downtown area. I mean, we had.
Did any Chinese people walk up to you? Did any Chinese people walk up to you and start talking to you like on the street?
No, we didn't have any of that. People kind of stayed away from
that was my experience. This is again another kind of Westernism.
Yeah.
I realized when I got to China that I assumed that most Asian cultures behave like Korean or Japanese people,
right?
Which is a lot more reserved, or a little more like, if they don't know you. Chinese people would walk up, like the missionaries were like, Chinese people are known as the loud ones. It's like they don't, like, they'll just walk up to you and start talking like, "Where are you from, America?" Like they're kind of there's an element of like what we call like the deep South, where like they never meet a stranger, or they're just not intimidated. Like they'll just walk up to, "You're white, what are you doing here?" kind of energy, and it can be very different.
Back in 2002, I went to Guilin, and Guilin was really like that. Like literally, a guy walked up to us and ended up spending like a whole afternoon showing us around, a young guy. But in Guangzhou, I think because it's, that's where a lot, like for instance, we have a family in our church that adopted a boy from China. Like Guangzhou is where they went to the consulate to get the paperwork. So I don't know if they're just more used to seeing white people. We didn't see very many. Did not see.
Yeah, I was pretty far out there. Yeah, I was up in the Shangri-La area, like pretty far. Like it was another few hours flight into China, and they had probably not seen white boys in a while. So.
Yeah.
So, how would you? So you said China gave you a sense of a sense of sadness, the struggles they go through, and the ease compared with what we go through. Anything else that China really stood out to you?
I mean, again, like the first night we got there were about 15 guys we went out to a restaurant with about 15 guys for dinner. The last night we were there, it was the same thing, about 12 or 14 people out for dinner. And you, except for the language, you would have just thought you were with any other group of people meeting like after a Sunday night service for dinner, just hanging out and talking. And I mean, the difference was the food was way better than the Denny's that we used to go to after church when I was
seriously, churches need to step up their after service game, man. We gotta it's gotta be like part of the mission.
Yeah, and there were these 2 guys that were hilarious. One was probably 6'2" and the other one was probably 5'2", and The tall guy was like, they were both like super outgoing, super gregarious. And the other men like pulled us aside, like, they're new Christians, excuse their behavior, and I'm like, oh, you mean they're acting like Americans? I mean, they're just boisterous and
Yeah,
laughing a
yeah,
lot,
yeah,
and
yeah.
they thought that they should be a little bit more reserved, I guess. But um, one of them was like, hey, do you want to bring any gifts back to America? I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, well, what do you want? Like, do you want a Gucci bag? Do you
Oh
want
yeah,
a
yeah.
Ralph Lauren bag? And he's like, well, my company makes them.
Yep.
And I'm
Oh yeah.
like, he's like, so I can get, I mean, he's like, it's not real, but, and I'm
My
like,
my daughter my daughter just turned 17 last year for her sweet 16. I gave her strands of wild caught pearls from China because they
wow.
took me to one of those markets and the missionaries are like, "Hey, the pearls are what everyone wants." And they're not the super like lab grown round white ones.
Yeah.
They're misshapen like they came from out of an oyster or whatever.
Yeah.
And they're just strands and they're like it's like a bargain. They knew I was white, but then the guy I was with spoke Chinese. But I kept those for 16 years. But yeah, it's the same thing. It's like, what do you want? Gucci, pearls.
Yeah.
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 They had like
Yeah. In
knockoff
China,
Xboxes.
when we were in China, we went shopping a little bit. I didn't buy anything, but Peter bought some clothes for his wife. But um, both China, Korea, and Nepal, they call it the foreigners. They sort of call it the foreigners tax under their breath. But it's like, yeah, you're like, all the prices go up when a white
Oh
person
yeah.
walks in,
Oh yep.
because they just
Unless you stay
figure
there.
that you
Yeah,
have more, so you
they
might
do.
as well spend it. So
Yep. I'm sure I paid a little more than a local.
yeah, yeah. So they probably did the same thing for you, but they were like, once they found out what Peter wanted, they're like, go away, let us negotiate this without you here,
Oh, that's great. That's
Yeah,
great. Oh man, that sounds like a Middle Eastern market too, in some
yeah,
ways.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
okay, so from China, where was the next stop?
Yeah, then from China we went to Korea, to Seoul, and that was probably the place that was least what I expected.
Okay,
It was a very Western city, very much like New York City, like Times Square. Everywhere we went in the downtown area, big digital billboards up in this shopping area that we were in,
I've heard.
almost like a
Yeah,
sci-fi movie.
yeah, I've heard that. Yeah.
Yeah, and but at the same time, there's a guy out in front of our hotel, um, and with his tricycle bike, with a speaker and a microphone, and he would speak, and then he would sing, and then he would speak, and then he would sing. I'm like, what's he doing? And they're like, oh, that's a street evangelist.
Oh,
And I'm like, oh, that's really
yeah, yeah.
interesting. And so they had a street evangelist right in front of our hotel. The people there were very Western, kind of like a little bit standoffish.
Mm.
Koreans seem to be like very proud of being Korean.
Oh yeah, yeah.
They're proud of K-pop. They're proud of
Mm-hmm.
K-drama. They're
Yep.
very like, this is who we are.
Yeah, their media, their
So,
pop culture, all that. Yeah.
oh yeah, and all the like the Robert's wife met us there, and because she likes to shop there, and she knows some people there. So she was telling us like all the Korean women use a ton of cosmetics, and and there are all these skincare stores everywhere
Wow.
with masks and whatever the acid is that they put on their face and all that
Right.
kind of stuff.
Hyaluronic.
And
Yeah.
you could see like almost all the women, like they kind of had the same look to their skin, like a little
That's been a problem.
glowy,
Yeah.
little
Young men in
dewy.
America are talking about this where yeah, there's this like stick your face, it's like old Pentecostals that used to be on TV in the 80s, like it's just
Yeah,
stick your face in it and shove it around.
yeah,
And men are saying we don't like this. And yeah, but it's
yeah.
bad.
Yeah, so it was interesting, in the sort of the secular culture, very, very Western, very modern.
Mm.
Um, and so one of the things that we did there is we went out to about an hour outside of town. There was this park, and in the park they had a long, super long wall, about 10 feet tall, and it was covered with these metal tiles that were just attached at the top. So in the wind, they would swing back and forth and it would sort of shimmer. and the entire Bible in Korean was written on these metal tiles. And so you could find, and you could really, it was easy to find different books of the Bible, even though it was in Korean. They use Western numbers, and then
Okay.
at the beginning of each book, they'd put the name in English. And so this park was like a prayer park. Like people go there to meditate. There's a family that's funded it. Up on like a hillside. There's a church. They have a church on the grounds as well. And they celebrate at this place. They have some monuments, and then they have like a little museum. And on the museum, there's this long wall of pictures, and it was all the white missionaries that had come to Korea over the last like 150 years to bring the gospel.
Wow.
And they wanted to celebrate those people that brought the gospel to them. And it was really touching. And we went to a church. We were in a church for a meeting later on, and they had a place where they celebrated like 2 or 3 missionaries as well. So that was fascinating to me. Like the Christians there appreciate the people that brought the gospel to them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this this park was just gorgeous and very, very, it was like the Vietnam War Memorial, but like even bigger.
Even bigger. Wow.
And super, super long, and the whole Bible written
So
out.
would you describe Seoul or Korea? I've been just trying to think of it through Western eyes. Does it feel like a New York with more faith? Like it's got this futuristic thing, but it's not anti-faith.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it was very secular.
You got things like very secular, but you have
but not
like
anti-religion. No.
Yeah. There, it pops in my head. I don't very shaky on my understanding of Korean folks, but there was a show I watched not too long ago, and there was a story about this Korean guy living in America, and his first generation, so he had all these social pressures, and his life was terrible. The point of the show is his life doesn't necessarily get any better. He just kind of gets over it. But at one point, right in the middle of the show, he goes to a Korean evangelistic church and starts crying, sitting there for like 10 minutes.
Wow.
And they're playing like praise music. And then he leaves and nothing changes. But there's this sense, I wanted to look it up because there was a sense in which it made sense to a Korean that sometimes you go back to church to kind of feel something when your life's at a hard time. Like there's a social something there. And this is on Netflix, and this wasn't some faith-based show. So anyway, I just find it fascinating that you could have like a future tech city, but a place to go flip through the Bible. That seems like
I got the sense when I was there that the church used to be a little bit more of a powerful force in the society, and that more people used to participate in Christian churches. A couple people made comments about it sounds familiar. We're not getting the younger generation as much.
It's very Western sounding. Yeah.
I was happy. Everybody there was Presbyterian.
Oh, it's big. Yeah.
All the Presbyterian churches are the big churches. And we were in they did an event again where it was a kickoff event. And so in fact I even have this is like the little program and the book they had.
Okay.
So they had this event to kick off MIM groups, Man in the Mirror groups in Korea, and at this old Presbyterian church. Now, so old there means venerable, like it's
almost gray hair. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean it's like that church is hosting it. Oh, well, that means it's more legitimate than
sure. Yes, I see what you mean. Yeah. It feels I've often tried to describe to American Presbyterians, like, you think you're Presbyterian, go see some Korean Presbyterians. like it's because they still have this. That is the man who discipled me. That is the historic church, and I like, you almost trace your lineage this way.
Yeah.
And I've met pastors when I was a seminary professor. They'd be like, "Well, I'm sent here because my pastor's pastor came here, and we've all been sent ever since." Yeah, it's this legacy stuff that they build naturally. It's very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I mean, we were there. Let's see, it was the 9th. So we were there on a Thursday for this meeting that we had Thursday afternoon at 2:30, and like 85 people came to this meeting on the 5th floor
Wow.
of this church in this big huge like classroom that they had set up for us, and heard all about Man in the Mirror Global, which is what they call us, Man in the Mirror Global, and they heard about Man in the Mirror Asia, and then they heard about Man in the Mirror Korea, and then they heard about the groups, the My Journey groups, MIM groups, and at the end of that, they were like, all right, who wants to participate in a group? And like 35 hands went up. I want to be in a Man in the Mirror group out of like the 80 people that were there. And so we're like, all right, well, we're going to break for dinner. We're going to bring some food in. But if you want to stay for a Q&A session afterwards, you can do that. So I was shocked when like 40 people stayed for the Q&A session afterwards.
Wow.
Because they'd already been there for like 3 hours, you know?
Really? Whoa.
Yeah.
Woo.
And so they brought in McDonald's triple cheeseburgers, fries, and Cokes for everyone, which they had heard me joking about. They're like, how have you liked the food? I'm like, the food's been amazing. Well, have you see, we have these other places here too. We have American food places. I'm like, yeah, I'm sure a McDonald's hamburger would taste good, but like, I'm really enjoying the food. So they just heard that. So they brought in cheeseburgers for everyone. And it was
Were
a
they
huge
better?
hit. Like everybody was like, ooh, McDonald's, you know? And so anyway, so we're sitting around and they're asking a lot of Q&A going on. Brian Lee is our MIM Korea director, and he spends half his time in LA and half his time in Seoul. And so Brian's sort of hosting this Q&A, and I'm getting translations here and there. And so this gentleman that was sitting right across from us starts like really speaking stridently. And you know, Korean is a little bit of a harsh language anyway. Like if you don't know it, it can sound a little bit like you know, like Russian can sound like that.
Yeah, it's a back of the throat.
And so this guy was talking and really, really stridently. And so finally I leaned over to Brian, and Brian's like, you know, nodding and, you know, yeah. So I'm like, what is he saying? And he said, he's saying he's sick and tired of the church telling him that he just needs to pray and fast more and his life will be better.
Wow.
And so, you know, we have a saying here, Christianity is not about behavior modification. It's about heart transformation.
Yeah.
And this was it. This is exactly what he was talking about. And
men are men. Yeah.
And so he's like, I'm looking at this My Journey workbook, and I love it because it's talking to me about real issues in my life. Not just about, you know, praying and fasting or, you know, or reading more, not just about head knowledge, but actually about living out my life, you know, my heart and my hands. And, so Robert was sitting next to me, and Robert said, what did he tell you? And so I told him, and he's like, oh, wow, I can't believe he said that. And I said, why? And he said, well, there's people from about 8 or 10 churches here, including many pastors, and like, they might be offended by him saying that, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I mean, nobody seemed to get upset when he said it. I saw a lot of nodding.
Sometimes I need to hear it. Yeah.
So that was pretty interesting. And again, it's just like, no matter what culture you're in, men crave authentic conversations about real life, you know, and how to apply the gospel to their real life, not just sort of this up here, metaphysical or super spiritual, super religious stuff. They want to know practically, how do I live my life every day? Yeah. Every culture, every guy wants to figure that out who's trying to follow Christ.
Absolutely. Okay, so from Korea.
Peter left after China. He had to come home. So I did Korea just with Robert, and then I go to Nepal. And
Nepal.
I may be home from Nepal, but my heart is still back there in Nepal.
Yeah, I noticed the flag behind you.
Yeah, so I got a flag, and they gave, when I spoke at a church, they gave me this real Nepali hat that I wore when I spoke, and apparently the height of it means something. This is a kind of a tall one.
So what does it mean? Like
I
taller
think
is
like I
more.
noticed that the older guys wore taller ones and the younger guys wore,
Oh, they gave you a tall one.
I guess so.
They might have
So
thought your bald head was cold, though. You know.
yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
So our guy in Nepal is this guy named Sher Thapa, and
Okay.
Sher's
First of all, real quick,
yeah.
let me stop. How did we even get to Nepal? Where did this lead to?
Yeah, so Sher is the head of EE in Evangelism Explosion in Nepal, and somehow he heard about what Robert was doing in Malaysia. And so when we went over there 2 years ago, Pat Morley and I went over there 2 years ago and did a men's conference, the Transformed Conference. And Cher contacted Robert and said, I'd really like to come, but I can't afford it. And so Robert flew him in.
Oh, good
And
for him. Yeah.
Cher and I hit it off. We had 2 years ago when we were there, we did a little mountain climb in a park. And so Cher and I spent a lot of time talking. And so Cher's just connected with Robert, and now he's got at least a half a dozen groups going using the material across Nepal. So they translated the material. By the way, every place that we went to, the material's been translated into that language. So
That's
the
awesome.
My Journey stuff is in English, Bahasa Indonesian, Chinese, Simplified Chinese, and Korean, and it's also in Nepali. And so yeah, so Cher's he's this head of EE, he's the head of MIM Nepal, and he's a pastor. And he pastors this little church in the slums of Kathmandu that has about 25 people in it.
Wow.
And
is Nepal persecuted or stressed or anything like that, or is it you're able to?
You know, it's interesting. About a month before we got there, they had this thing called the Gen Z revolution, where they literally trashed. They trashed the prime minister's residence, made him flee.
I saw this, I think. Yeah.
Burned about 20 police stations, or burned a bunch of police stations. About 20 students got killed. The average age in Nepal is 25. Unemployment is 40%. So a lot of young people with not a lot to do. They do odd jobs and that kind of thing. But and it's illegal to proselytize there. So they told us, like, when they talk to somebody about Jesus and they decide that they want to become a Christian, they literally make them sign a release form saying that they were not coerced in any way, often just to keep themselves safe. But the church operates a lot of the predominant religion is Hinduism. The Nepali people are probably closest to India. They're Nepal's in a really tough spot. They're a long, thin country with their north border is China and their south border is India. And even though they're sort of closer ethnically to the Indians, they like the Chinese better because the Indians they feel like have taken advantage of them over and over again.
I've heard some of that. Yeah. Okay.
So in Nepal, the people are very warm, very friendly. I went to speak at a church. We got there on Saturday. I went on Sunday to speak at a church and out about 2 hours outside of town. And they had about 80, 85 women on one side of everybody sitting on the floor. So on one side, they had about 85 women. And on the other side, they had about 30 men. And so I was talking to the pastor and I said, do women have a hard time getting their husbands to come to church? And he said, well, sometimes, but really most of these women that are here without a husband, their husband is working somewhere out of the country. And so the economic opportunities in Nepal are not great. And so these guys will go to like Dubai or Doha or Kuala Lumpur or Jakarta, and they'll work there and they'll send money back to their family in Nepal. And sometimes they'll only get home like for a month every other year. Like, wow, it's a really hard life to live.
That's wow.
And so that's why the pastor said that's why so many of these women are here without their husbands. They're working overseas somewhere. That was not a Presbyterian church. It was an Assemblies of God church, and
because it was charismatic.
Very, very expressive, and really a lot of fun to be there. Their worship was wonderful, and
that's great.
And they had these three teenage girls that did the tambourines like in front of the stage on the floor, in front of the platform on the floor, and
Like
they
a
had like
performance.
choreographed
Yeah.
tambourine sequences
Oh
that
yeah.
they were doing together.
That's my childhood, man. I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So it was really cool. And speaking through, I spoke through an interpreter in a lot of places, and that was one place that I got to preach through an interpreter. And you know, again, the people are so warm that everybody wants pictures.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was one thing that was really interesting that I learned in Nepal, and I think this has an impact throughout Asia. And because in many countries that I went to, when they posed for pictures, they put a thumb up. The Christians I posed with, they would put a thumb up. And so Cher is the EE director. So he said to me, "Do you know why we put a thumb up?" And I'm like, I don't know, because it's cool in America to like put your thumb up. And he said, "No, it's because the EE evangelism presentation
Yeah, I
has
do.
5 points.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
God loves you.
Yep.
Man is a sinner. God is just. Jesus solves the problem of a
It's been
just
20
God.
years. Yeah, there we go.
And
Yeah.
then how do you have to live by repentance and faith. And so this means God loves you or God is good. That we all know
It's
that.
almost like how we do this all the time, like love,
Yeah,
peace.
yeah. And so it was so widespread. I'm wondering if that's like an EE impact, because I know EE is everywhere over there.
Oh yeah, yeah, sure.
And so it's just kind of a cool thing to think about. All these people are doing this, and many of them may not even realize why, but
That's awesome.
It kind of came from that. So Cher is just this wonderful, warm guy. Took us out to his house in the outskirts of Kathmandu, and his wife Sharmila and his son Simon were just so fun to be with. His son's only 5, and so Cher's got this little church. He's got EE. He's got MIM groups. He's got groups going now in like 5 or 6 cities across Nepal. We met we met the superintendent, the AG superintendent for the entire country. Met with him. Met with another pastor who's got a pretty large church in Kathmandu, but he's responsible for 37 churches total. That
wow.
he's got pastors in each of those churches that he's over. Just again, super warm people. Again, the way, like in Cher's church on Sunday morning, they actually they do church on Saturdays there because Sunday through Friday is their work week. And so that's where when I preached, it was at a Saturday service. And then on Sunday morning early, his church had a service. They don't normally do that, but people knew that we were there and they wanted to meet us. So they came before work, and we had a service, a short service on Sunday. And we were in the slums of Kathmandu.
Wow.
Just destitute. I can't even, it's like hard to describe, but it's right on the banks of the river. And so this little church was under 5 feet of water 8 months ago, and because the river overflowed.
Wow.
And we were able to, before we left, we sent $500 a head, and they were able to use just that little amount of money, and they repainted their church, redid the floor, put a little platform in, bought their first pulpit they've ever had.
For $500.
Bought a guitar for worship. They never had an instrument. And then we're able to buy Bibles. In Nepali, they bought Bibles for all their congregants.
Yeah.
And so that was pretty exciting to see that as well.
I want to talk about impact in the kingdom.
Yeah.
I'm not going to ever say anything bad about someone giving to the kingdom, but when you look at the sizable impact of $500 on a church in Nepal versus some of the stuff, that we spend money on,
Yeah.
it's amazing.
Yeah.
And it raises this question, and maybe this is a good place to bring it home, which is, okay, a lot of people listening right now are not in Asia.
Yeah.
They're living in the West, mostly in America and Canada. But in general, how can folks from our world be more involved with what Man in the Mirror in Asia is doing? What kind of things does Man in the Mirror Asia want in the next 3 to 5 years? Like where are they going?
Yeah. So we need more curriculum, and so we've got to develop more content that will, and frankly, it's content that probably we can use in the U.S. and in Asia,
Yeah,
in the
true.
East and the West, with just minor modifications. We've got to translate. So in November, next month in November, the Vietnamese version of the first year of the book will come out.
Wow.
We're working on Tagalog, which is the Philippine language, and they're working on Burmese, which is Myanmar. They won't be able to go into Myanmar. That's a closed country, but there's a lot of Burmese that work outside of Myanmar. And so they want to be able to reach men there. So we have to fund translations. It's hard for a guy to be in ministry there. So we're trying to offer also some seed money to help guys get up and running until they can raise money locally. I
Okay.
want to give a shout out. I'm not sure if they'd want me to, but maybe we cut this out. But the McClellan Foundation has been super helpful with us in providing a big chunk of funding for us to get things translated.
Mm.
And they've also provided, though, a consultant. There's a consultant that lives in Jakarta and actually came up to Kuala Lumpur to meet with Peter and I while we were there. And they're willing to help us with almost with anything we ask. Like if she doesn't know how to do it, she'll find somebody that can help us do it, which is a pretty cool thing for a
Yeah.
foundation based in America to have people stationed in the areas that they're serving.
Well, they need to
But
hear
yeah,
about this.
we need materials, and we need to get guys up to speed.
Yeah, and we need to hear about this kind of impact. This
Oh
is the
yeah,
things that God is already at work, and prayer impact, it will matter. Financial impact will matter, and Man in the Mirror in Asia is an amazing example of how we kind of started this conversation, which is the issues are the issues,
right.
and sometimes we here have so much at our disposal that it's almost like, well, I don't really like that journal or that Bible study because I want a little bit better. And yes,
Yeah.
those fine. But when you hear these stories about a church that floods and $500 pulls it out of the water, and
Oh yeah.
languages that need this, they have nothing.
Yeah.
I think it invites people in the West to step up and
Yeah, and I think the other thing is like just we take the practice of our faith very much for granted, you know.
Mhm.
And so much so that if like we don't like the music in our church, we'll look for another church. Or
Yeah, it's true.
that preacher didn't make me feel really good the last couple weeks, so maybe that's not where God wants me.
Short leash. Yeah.
Whereas a guy in China is like he's so happy to have found a place that he can go to and get any teaching at all. He's gonna go there, or a woman's gonna go there, and they just don't the little things just don't matter to them.
Yeah.
They're just so happy to have a place to go.
Because the big thing does. That's
Right,
right. The
because the
one
big
big thing
thing
does.
does. And it really has like I don't know how the early church felt, but when you hear Peter talking about some of the persecution and suffering that he's calling people to endure, like it's hard for that to feel pertinent in the
No,
United
yeah.
States or Canada, but it feels very pertinent in Nepal. It feels very pertinent in China or
Yeah.
Indonesia.
Yeah. Yeah.
That you may have to endure suffering. You will most likely have to endure suffering for the sake of Christ, of following Christ, and these people do it joyfully.
And the blood of the martyrs is the seed of the church.